So let's start with this question. How can you expand the areas which you're comfortable with? How can you expand your comfort in new things that you'd like to be able to do? So to start this discussion, I'm going to give you an example. If you look at this slide, on the left-hand side is a picture of Mary. And I'm showing Mary here to be an introvert. She's a person who does not like to speak to a lot of people. She doesn't like to speak in front of a large audience per se. But she knows that a week from now, she has to make a presentation that's in front of a lot of people. And so it's uncomfortable to her. All right. So she's by herself. She'd rather be by herself, and she's planning for this. She's planning for this, and she's going to, eventually give her presentation. Now, she's got two choices. She can either be completely honest with herself, and she can say, you know, I was never good at public speaking. I'm really an introvert. That's really just not me. And just leave it there. And the problem with that is that she's not going to end up pushing herself in any way. She's not going to develop this new capability. And she's not going to fulfill all the things that she could do well. So by just completely admitting to herself what her problem is and not doing anything else, she's not expanding her comfort zone. Okay, now she's got another choice. In her other choice, she can tell herself, oh, I can do that. I'm actually an introvert. I'm really capable of doing all these things. Okay, we call that self-affirmation. You can look in the mirror every day and you can say, I'm very courageous, I'm strong, so forth, right? And maybe it's true, but maybe it's not fully true. And the problem with doing that is you can do it for a little bit, but your mind knows when you're not being completely honest with yourself. So if you do that too much, you can project a little bit, but there will be a difference in what you're telling yourself and what you truly believe. And once your mind starts to evaluate that difference, that will turn into a different kind of insecurity. In fact, your brain does not like the story that you are not good. So when you tell yourself, oh, I'm really courageous, but you know that that's not how you acted in the past, your brain feels like you lied to yourself, and your brain feels like you're really saying you don't like the version of yourself that you were. And all of those cause you a different set of problems. So you see, you've got these two choices. One, stay in the middle of your comfort zone and don't grow, or lie to yourself, and maybe you can push yourself out, but it might not really be genuinely you. And a lot of people get stuck between these two things. So, what should you do? Fortunately, there is a way to get past this. All right, so on this next slide, I want to talk about what actually makes sense for people. How do they overcome, how do they expand their comfort zone without getting themselves into a situation where they're no longer genuine with themselves? Okay, so what you should do, and what Mary could do, is, first of all, be self-aware. You can know that you're an introvert. You can know that you're not, in the past, have not been good at public speaking. You can be in touch with all of this and be comfortable with it. There's nothing wrong with it. And in fact, if you really think about it, you can look at all of the positive aspects of whatever comes with that. So with everything that's a weakness, there's always a positive part of that. And so maybe you might say, okay, I'm an introvert, but that means that I actually think more than other people. While other people are talking, I'm thinking more. And you can appreciate the parts that are really good from whatever you think are this weakness. And you can build on that. That's a strength for you, actually. Okay. At the same time, while you are aware that you are an introvert and that public speaking is not the most natural thing for you, you can play a game where you can mimic. You can be aware of yourself and you can play the game that you're pretending to be a little bit like a person who's an extrovert. So you didn't lie to yourself, you didn't get lost, you didn't fool yourself into thinking I'm an extrovert when you're not. You're aware of who you are, but then you start to have the actions. You make yourself have the actions because you're playing, mimicking, faking the behavior of a person that you're not. But since you know you're faking it, since you know it's not your natural self, you're not lying to yourself. And as you do this, as you fake that behavior, as you mimic that behavior, it slowly becomes more and more natural to you. And at some point, you'll actually realize, well, maybe I'm not that introverted. And maybe I actually can do some of these things because I've been doing them. Okay? And this is a very powerful technique. It's right in the middle of convincing yourself you can do things that you can't do and not doing things because you think you can't do them. It's the way that you get from one to the other. So think about this. It's like I said, it's a very powerful idea. And if you internalize this, and I think you should just take some time and think about it, you'll see that you can do a lot of things with this that you didn't think that you could really do before. Okay, so this takes me to another topic, or actually extending this topic of comfort zone. Comfort zone is really at the core of a lot of these things. So you want to be able to step out of your comfort zone because that's what lets you do all of these things. And I just showed you in the last slide that there's ways to do that, that you can get from staying in the middle of your comfort zone to getting to the edge of your comfort zone and doing new things without going way too far that you get yourself in trouble in that process. So you really have these three choices. You can either stay right in the middle of your comfort zone. The problem with that is you don't actually ever learn anything new. You just stay the way that you are, and by not learning new things, you're not able to do new things. Okay. You can, on the other extreme, push yourself very far out of your comfort zone. But that has a problem. That means that you're basically in an area mostly dominated by fear. You're so far away from what you're comfortable with that fear takes over and you're not able to learn anything. You're really more frozen. You're just stuck in this very uncomfortable situation. What you want to be is in the middle of these two. You don't want to be in the panic zone. You don't want to be in the comfort zone. You want to be in a zone where you're learning. And the last conversation that we had about Mary and learning to present in a natural way, getting to a learning area, not staying in the comfort zone and not being completely panicked, that's your path. That's how you do it. And the reason why this is so important is that research has shown that people who are entrepreneurs and people who are innovators, they are people who live their entire lives in the learning zone. They don't live their lives in the middle of their comfort zone. They're always at the edge. They're always, therefore, in a little bit of an uncomfortable spot, but not very uncomfortable. And in this way, they are always learning new things. And over time, they learn at a much faster pace than everyone else. And over time, that difference between how fast other people are learning and how fast they are learning, that difference has become great. So they end up knowing a lot more things, and they end up becoming much more capable. And it all just comes from always being at the edge of the comfort zone, always pushing it just a little bit farther so that you're not stuck right in the middle of what you already know. Okay, so it's time to do one more reflection assignment. And this time, what I'd like you to do is think about what area or behavior would you like to develop. And now that we've talked about the ways that you can get into a farther part away from the middle of your comfort zone, what technique can you use to grow in that way? What would you do yourself? How will you think about it? And I want you to think through this, and I want you to write it down, and this is part of the assignment of this class at this stage.